What's going on YouTube? Now there are a lot of entries in the compact crossover class, which means that many of the offerings outside of the main Japanese brands are often overlooked. The Sportage is one of those crossovers. However, Kia is hoping to change that this year with revisions to the already stylish design and even more standard features for 2020. Of course, we do want to thank our friends at Cartown Kia for giving us access to this 2020 Sportage in the brand new S trim. And if you're in the market for any new Kia, be sure to stop by their dealership or visit them via their website, which we provided a link to in the video description. So with that all said, let's see what updates have been made to the Sportage. So starting off with the styling, the most important and most obvious change is the addition of the S trim, which is what we have with us today. More or less, it brings the premium sport styling from the SX down to a more affordable price point. As such, the S and the SX share the same dark chrome grille with a unique mesh, relative to the LX and EX, which have a more traditional chrome grille. The lower fascia does also change between the sport and luxury trims. However, the headlights mostly stay the same throughout the trims, with all models except the SX getting these unique circular LED daytime running lights and halogen projector headlights. That trim instead gets fully LED lights that resemble the ones in the Stinger, and then down below all but the base model have fog lights. As far as the rest of the styling, it continues with the same provocative look, with a sharply raked side profile leading into a handsome and athletic looking rear. The taillights have been redesigned this year, and like most recent Kias, they are LED and connect in the middle. And then to have a coherent look with the front, the reverse and turn signal lights are in a separate housing down at the bottom. The two sport trims do have a silver diffuser, but only the SX Turbo will have exposed exhaust. So all in all, while the styling is probably not for everyone, I appreciate that Kia is doing something different and cool in a segment that's typically quite bland. Now another big thing Kia updated this year are the wheel designs. Every trim will come with alloy wheels, starting at 17 inches on the LX, and then 18-inch alloys on the S and EX, but with different finishes. Finally, the SX comes with 19-inch split 5-spoke alloys. Heading on up to the mirrors, Kia surprisingly gives you heated, power folding mirrors with blind spot monitoring, as standard on all but the base model. And then as far as all your other safety systems, Kia has expanded their availability to now include the base model for 2020. Forward emergency braking with pedestrian detection, lane keeping assist, and automatic high beams are now standard on all models. And then adaptive cruise control with stop and go will be on the SX or the EX with technology package. Finally, as far as the fuel tank is concerned, it is 16.4 gallons, which is good for 426 miles of range with the base engine and front wheel drive like this model. But anyways, that's it for the updates to the bold exterior. So now let's go ahead and get inside and see what changes Kia has made to the inside. So normally on the Sportage, the smart entry system is reserved for the EX trim and up. However, on this S trim, we actually have the premium package, which does give us the smart entry system with this really nicely finished key fob. And then to get inside the vehicle itself, there is not a sensor behind the handle, so what you're going to do is just press this black button. Alright, so checking out the cabin of the refreshed 2020 Sportage. The changes are a little less substantial than on the outside, however there are still plenty abound when you start looking around. Now as far as your various interior color and material combinations, there are plenty. So starting out with your base LX, that's going to come with fabric seating in black or gray. And then when you go up to either this S or the EX trim, you're going to have the leatherette seating in black or gray. Finally, when you go for the top end SX Turbo, that's going to get you upgraded to real leather in those same colors, plus you have the extra option of beige. Now turning over here to the door trim, it is nicely appointed. You have a large leather wrapped armrest with the color contrast stitching as well as leather above it. Got some piano black trim with your window controls. This window, the driver's window, is auto down only. We do also have power folding mirrors as well, but there are no memory seats on any of the trim levels. On the Sport trim and the SX Turbo, you will have the aluminum pedals. And then turning over here to the seats, normally the S and the LX are going to have manual seats, but this 10-way power seat is standard on the EX and up, or optional when you get that premium package for this S model. Then of course, like I already said, this is a leatherette, however it's very convincing. You definitely have some really nice perforation and stitching, so it looks and feels very realistic. So looking around the cabin, like I already said, the main parts of the design haven't really changed for 2020. However, it does continue to have a very upscale look to it, especially for a model that's ringing in at only about $30,000. So across our upper dash here, we do have full soft touch plastic with the stitching detail. And then dropping down to some of our lower areas, it is hard touch. However, I do like that they've used kind of a mixture of black and the tan color to give you that contrast. And then once again, like many of the features that I've mentioned so far, optional on the S through the premium package is push button start, and then it's standard on the EX and up. Now, one of the important changes for 2020 is this premium 8-inch touch display that you're looking at right now. This is now standard across all of the trim levels. Alright, now checking out the gauges, it is like the typical Kia. You've got a couple different arrangements. They're always going to be 2 analog gauges. However, we've got the small multifunction display since this is the lower end model, and then there is a 7-inch multifunction display on your upper end models. But as far as the information contained within them, it's just the typical fare of things. You can actually make adjustments to things like your driver's assistance right from here. Now coming back to the steering, it is electric power assisted, and then you're looking at one of the other big 2020 changes, and that's that we have a redesigned steering wheel. It's actually really nice. You've got a kind of a soft, smooth perforated leather. It is flat bottomed. You've got the kind of faux aluminum accents and the piano black, so it's definitely, it feels and looks really aesthetically pleasing. As far as the buttons, you've got your voice command, audio and phone buttons right there, and then we have our buttons for our cruise control. As far as the steering wheel itself, it is manually tilt and telescoping, and then you can get heating if you go for the SX trim. Now, of course, this being a family compact crossover, storage is very important, and the Sportage does do a good job in this area. So opening up our center console here, as you can see, it's actually very large. It's probably about 8 inches deep, and it's very wide. You do have a nice felt lining down at the bottom as well. In front of that, you got a nice little slot. You can maybe stick your phone or something like that. Your 2 cup holders, and then we have a large bin up here in the very front. And if you can see that, we actually have the Qi wireless phone charger. That is a new option in 2020. For this S, that's part of the premium package. But it will be standard if you go for the SX Turbo. But if you don't have a phone that uses wireless phone charging, you do still have 2 12-volt outlets and a USB port. Now coming on back to the shifter here, it is just a regular shifter. So you pull back for drive, and you can bump over here to the left to shift manually right here. Or if you go for the S or the SX trim, so your sport trims, they will come with these silver painted paddle shifters. When we go into reverse, every model is going to come standard with a backup camera. As you can see, we do have active trajectory. There is no 360-degree camera system, but you will find parking sensors in the front and rear if you go for the SX Turbo. And then back behind the shifter, this premium package also gives us the electronic parking brake and brake hold functionality, which is standard on the higher end trims. Now next to it here we have the button labeled drive modes. There's a few different ones. It looks like normal, sport, and eco. We'll try those out a little later in the test drive section. Alright, now heading on up the console here, the next stop is our climate controls. Like tons of different features, you're probably noticing a trend. A lot of things in this car are available in the premium package. So this is one of those things. We have the dual zone automatic climate control, which is normally included on only the EX and up. But as you can see, it is very simple in operation. You just twist these knobs to adjust the temperature, and you'll notice the settings up there change in the screen. And you do have physical buttons for all the functions. You don't have to go into the screen to adjust anything. Oh, and also below that here, you'll notice the 3-stage heated seats. That's also part of the premium package on the S model. The EX will have that standard equipment, and then the SX Turbo is also going to throw in 3-stage ventilation for both the driver and the passenger. Then heading on up to our audio system, the majority of the models come with a 160-watt 6-speaker sound system, including this one. However, if you do go for the SX Turbo, you will get a 320-watt 8-speaker Harman Kardon sound system. But let's go ahead and sample that standard 6-speaker audio system. I'm actually surprised that this bass system is as good as it is. I believe it is shared with the Tucson, and in that vehicle I was also impressed by how nice the bass sound system sounds. But anyways, that brings us on up here to our Kia UVO system. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. Alright, so getting started with our UVO system here. This is our home screen as shown on an 8-inch display in the 2020 Kia Sportage. And in this home screen, basically you've got several different areas that you can just select and skip straight into those sections. So for instance, here we have our Bluetooth audio, and I can just click straight into it, and it brings us into our audio section. Now, two of these blacked out buttons you might be noticing are some of the most interesting features, and that is your Android Auto and your Apple CarPlay. These come standard on pretty much every trim of every Kia, which is a very nice feature, and they do work the same way as in other vehicles. So you can just plug into your USB port, and you do have access then to things like your Google Earth Maps and different phone settings, so you don't necessarily have to rely on the UVO system. Heading on up, we will find an auto dimming mirror with 3 HomeLink universal remotes. This is usually reserved for the SX Turbo only, but we do have it in the premium package. And that same thing can also be said for this panoramic moonroof. So our model's premium package includes this. As you can see, it is absolutely huge. Usually in this class, you do not see panoramic moonroofs quite this big. It goes all the way back past the rear occupant's headrest. So definitely very impressed by that. And this whole front panel opens up, so there's really a lot of air that can come in. And then you will also find a windscreen. But overall, I have to say, I'm very impressed by the cabin of this Sportage. This is kind of like, reminds me of the Hyundai Tucson. They do share some componentry, but the most important thing they share is that they stuff a lot of features, a lot of luxury things in this cabin, while not inflating the price tag. But anyways, now I'll go ahead and hand it off to my brother Mason to finish up the rest of the cabin.
So checking out the rear seat of the 2020 Kia Sportage, you are going to find a really good amount of space for its class. You'll find 38 inches of rear legroom and 39 inches of rear headroom, which does place it above the Toyota RAV4 in terms of legroom, but it is still a little bit behind the Honda CR-V. Now turning over here to the door trim, Kia does give you really nice materials. So you do have a leather padded armrest with stitching going through it, and this portion is also padded just like the front. Now of course you do have a power window in the back, as well as some bottle storage. Now turning over to the seat itself, it is a lovely design. I really am a big fan of the perforations, and it does also recline. Now here in the center you will find standard rear air vents across all Sportage models, which is a really nice touch. And on your higher end models you will also find this USB port. It's a smart charging one, as well as a 12-volt power outlet. Now off to the center here, you do have a fold-down armrest with cup holders inside. And up top, you will find my favorite feature of the rear seat, and that's this lovely panoramic moonroof. It's absolutely massive. It's one of the biggest panoramic moonroofs I've ever seen, and it really helps to air out the cabin back here. And turning over, you have an assist grip, as well as some LED lighting and a coat hook. Now as far as rear legroom is concerned behind Drew's position, as the specs would suggest, I don't have too many issues back here, so I have about 6 to 7 inches of rear legroom, and my feet can easily slide up under the seat. And with the seat scooted all the way back, it's pretty much the same story. Now to fold the seats, you can do them from up here. So all you have to do is locate this little button, pull up, and it does fold 60-40 split. Now coming around to the tailgate, on this model it is not power. However, on the EX trims and higher, it is the smart hands-free power system. Now once you get inside the Sportage's trunk, you are going to find a little bit smaller space than you would in most of the rivals. So you're going to find 31 cubic feet behind the second row seats, and with them folded it does expand to 60 cubic feet. Now like I said, that does place it behind main rivals like the Honda CR-V and Toyota RAV4, however it isn't in line with the Hyundai Tucson. Now like I said, this is finished very nicely back here. You do have some LED lighting, and underneath the floor here, if I move out some of these cargo mats, now as you can see up under the floor, you do have plenty of space. You have probably about a foot more space back here, and it does go back quite deep. And in addition to that, you do have a metal sill here. Now coming around to the passenger seat, on this model is manually adjusting. However, on the SX it is 8-way power. Now down below here at the glove box area, you will find a good sized one. It is also dampened and illuminated. And up top, you do have a sun visor with a mirror and light. And it does also detach and extend. But anyway, guys, that sums up all the rear areas of the Sportage. So now let's go ahead and get it on the road and see how this refresh model performs.
Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the powertrains. Now, since I did say they're plural, there are 2 powertrains. Most of the trims, so the vast majority of you guys are going to choose the base setup, which is what this one is. And that's your standard 2.4 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, producing 181 horsepower and 175 pound-feet of torque. However, there is the SX Turbo model, and the turbo means turbocharged, so it's got a 2-liter turbo i4, and that's going to make 240 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. Regardless of which trim you choose, you do have the option between front or all-wheel drive, and you will always have a 6-speed automatic transmission. And then lastly, as far as your fuel economy, it is class competitive. So your front-wheel drive 2.4 liter model is going to be rated at 23 city, 30 highway, 26 combined. And then as far as that, after that it goes downhill from there. So we have all-wheel drive added to this is going to bring it to 23 combined. If you go for the front-wheel drive turbo model, that's also going to be 23 combined. And then if you go for all-wheel drive on that, you're going to lose 2 and go down to 21 combined. But anyways, let's go ahead and take this for a quick spin. So first, taking off and getting up to highway speed in the Sportage. This, like I said, is the base engine, and it gets up to speed reasonably well. It's basically what I would expect in this class. It's not going to knock your socks off or anything like that. So if you want more of a enthusiast, kind of like a lot of torque and more power, then you can grab the turbo model. But as far as for everyday needs, this is definitely more than suitable. Also, it is worth talking about, you guys might be able to hear that there's kind of like some road noise and stuff. We're on a really horrible and dilapidated road. Every car that I've ever driven on this road, it does transmit in here. So we'll get on a smoother road and we'll see what you could more likely expect in day-to-day living. Just going onto this paved part, you can immediately tell the difference. Yeah. There is not an auto start-stop system on this car. So similar to the Hyundai Tucson, they don't have that feature. From what I discern from what most people say about it, that's not really a con. And just looking at this row of crossovers here just makes me want to say, because there's 3 RAV4 LEs that look exactly the same right in a row here, and I just want to comment on that. That's one of the benefits of this car, and one of the things I really like about it. This is not a car you see everywhere, and it's designed in a unique way. Nowadays, it seems like all the crossovers are just getting more and more the same. There's 6 white crossovers that share almost exactly the same styling right in a row.
There's another RAV4 right there.
Yeah, it's
Equinox.
there's an Equinox. That's a little bit different, but if you want something that stands out a little bit, this is definitely a good way to go, because you have way more style than what is typical in the class.
And now that we have gotten on that smoother road, I do want to talk about just how smooth this car is. It really is. It rides really, really nicely in here. It's very quiet, like Drew was mentioning, and the seats are super comfortable. And really, this is just made to be kind of like a family type of vehicle, and you can tell that they've tuned it. You know, you hit a bump and you really don't feel it. So it's a very, very smooth riding car. You know, and after that acceleration there, I do kind of want to point out a lot in this class, not naming names, but some of them can be kind of loud upon hard acceleration. And this engine, you know, this is the base one, obviously, and while the power isn't going to knock your socks off, when you do accelerate, it still has a very quiet and refined note. It doesn't, like, rev up to 12,000 RPM and make a ton of noise. And, you know, I think that's a benefit in this class, because if you get the base engine, I don't think you really want to hear it. So it's good that they kind of have tuned it out to give you a more luxurious experience.
That is true. And we can talk about, as well, the transmission, because that's also part of it. A lot of the competition, you're going to be looking at having a continuously variable transmission. And this, we have a more traditional 6-speed automatic. So it does allow for us not to have to listen to any type of drone or anything like that. It's also very smooth. This is 6 speeds to many people is kind of a sweet spot, in the sense that that it doesn't shift too many times, but it also has enough gears to keep you up to this right speed. Since we're rolling down a little bit of a country road, I want to talk about the steering. Now, I really want to commend this Sportage on the steering. They have done a really good job. It's got like it's basically the type of steering that I want to feel on a crossover like this. You know, it's really fast responding. It's also naturally weighted. This feels kind of like a hydraulic setup. You know, it doesn't have such artificial lightness like a lot of the rivals suffer from. It feels very natural, so you always have a sense of where the wheels are being placed, going around corners and whatnot. Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Soul steering setup. I also complimented it as well back when we drove that a couple months ago, just because it does have a natural and linear feel. Kia and Hyundai, they've both been working a lot on steering feel, since that's something that they have taken flack for in the past, and they've really improved things. Honestly, they've gone actually ahead of many of the rivals, which still, like I said, have that kind of like, feels like almost like you're using one of those video game steering wheels. But overall, while this may be kind of wild looking on the outside, once you get driving and stuff, it's a really, really good family vehicle. The way that they've tuned this vehicle, it's just so comfortable, and it just feels like such a natural family vehicle that you could just, you know, get in and drive day to day and just be completely comfortable and have all the things that you and your family want. Of course, with this being a Kia, also with a lot of extra features and a lot of added value that some of the competition skips over. So, all in all, I think it really is a great option in the family field that a lot of people are not necessarily thinking about, and they really should. Now, as far as the pricing is concerned for the 2020 Kia Sportage, just like pretty much every other Kia, it does have very competitive pricing compared to the rest of the class. So for the very base LX model, that's going to start at $23,990. If you want to move one rung up, which is this S model, that's going to be $25,990. The EX is $27,190. And finally, the top dog SX trim starts at $33,490. Now, that is worth noting that all-wheel drive is a $1,500 option on all trims, except for the S, which is a $1,700 option. Now, even though we do have the S model, which is second from base, we do have quite a few options on this particular model to make it really nice here on the inside. So we have the S Premium package, which adds quite a few features for $3,200. As well as cargo mats for $95, carpeted floor mats for $135, and a cargo net for $50. And then finally, when you include the destination charge of $1,045, this particular model as equipped comes in at $30,515, which I have to admit is definitely a great value for the segment. For $30,000, you have everything you could ever want in this cabin. You have the pano roof, it's a really nice cabin in here. It feels very upscale and premium. And $30,000 is a lot less expensive than most of the rivals, which like the RAV4 can get up to almost $40,000.
Well guys, we've enjoyed watching this in-depth look at the 2020 Kia Sportage S. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.